This is the Cafe Racer Podcast, episode 141 for April 27, 2019. I am Daddy No Fun.
And I am Jackie Van Ham. How's it going? Good morning, mister.
It's going. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Where are you this morning?
I'm in South Florida.
Good for you. That sounds absolutely lovely. Although to be honest, I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and it is Kentucky Derby season, and it's absolutely spectacular here. It's beautiful. It's an awesome time of year. There's too many crowds and too many people, and actually that's why I'm getting out of town next weekend for it. I am headed to a really neat motorcycling event, of course, down in Tennessee called Flat Out Friday. It's part of the Smoky Mountain Harley Davidson. They've got a huge festival of bands and bikes and custom bike shows. There's even a women in motorcycling event that goes on all weekend long because I think it's May. I feel bad. I should know the date. I think it is May 4th. It's International Women's Ride Day. And so they've decided to wrap that all up in that same weekend as well. So I actually am going to miss the Kentucky Derby. I'm headed to Tennessee.
Are you like a Kentucky Derby fan normally?
Oh, I mean, the Derby's cool. It's a very, traditional part of the South. It's a big tradition here in Louisville in particular. It's a neat time of year. It's beautiful. The flowers are in bloom, all that good stuff. But it's a gazillion dollars to actually go to the Derby now. It's incredibly expensive. I've actually never gone. I've lived here for 15 years.
Really?
It's just way too much money. It's ridiculous. So I usually go on Wednesday or Thursday before the actual Kentucky Derby. That's when the locals go now because you can afford to go.
So we kind of started off pretty quick. I didn't really get a chance to introduce you.
Sorry, I jumped right into
it. We've known each other for a while, so we just started talking. So today, my guest, and if you guys notice, Crash isn't here because something happened at his house. He's got kind of an emergency going on with a plumbing issue. So just Jackie and Daddy No Fun today. But Jackie Van Ham is a motorcycle luminary. She's been in the industry for years, since the early 2000s. If you've never seen her, you're not paying attention to motorcycling because you're everywhere pretty much, right?
That's awesome. That's nice of you to say.
No, it's true. I mean, you can't follow motorcycling on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that or anything without seeing you involved in something. And I know that you've always been involved, for us in the vintage bike and cafe racer bike, but you've been doing motorcycle racing and all kinds of stuff, right?
Absolutely. So you're right. I started collecting and riding vintage motorcycles in the early 2000s. And I just fell in love with the old bikes. Same reason why you love the old bikes, all of the style and all of the fussiness and all of the difficulties that go with having vintage bikes. Although I'm now a vintage Honda and BMW owner. So all the fussiness is removed because they're all great runners. But anywho, so I started out with vintage motorcycles and antique motorcycles and just as a fan. And in 2007, 2008, I started doing some freelance writing for a couple of different magazines. I also started jumping in and helping out with some live events for buddies of mine that were hosting some cool events, especially up in Chicago, which is where I'm from originally, but I've lived here in Louisville, Kentucky now. So the fact that I could go there and hang out with all my buddies, help sell some t-shirts and get paid to do it, to me was like mind blowing. I had no idea that could even be a job. And I just kind of ran with it from there and came up with this kind of scheme. I call it a scheme, but I hatched a plan in order to ship my 1972 BMW R75/5 vintage BMW over to Europe and go ride Europe and go check out some of that awesome motorcycling community, because I'd already seen a decent amount of particularly vintage motorcycling community here in the US, going to ARMA races, going to different mods versus rockers type events. Mm-hmm. I'd already had my toe in the water of that kind of stuff, a little bit of high level racing, AMA 200, Daytona 200, things like that also. But I really was curious what motorcycling was like in Europe. I knew everybody here was awesome and love bikes, and the motorcyclists are incredibly kind and giving people and generous, and sleep on my floor and you can crash here.
What the funny thing is, it doesn't matter what kind of motorcyclist. My experience is everyone I've even run into, even honest to God, even hardcore 1%ers have been kind and helpful. And I did a couple cross country trips, and guys would walk up to me that were wearing colors from, I'm not going to mention, and be, hey, what kind of bike is that? And just BS with me for a while. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's universal.
It's totally the universal language, and I love that it's also the universal unifier. It brings people together in this sport that we love, this mode of transportation that we're passionate about called motorcycling. And so I was curious what Europe looked like, and I had the good fortune of being sent over in 2006 to go to Austin to go to the MotoGP.
Mhm.
And MotoGP in Europe is entirely different from MotoGP here in the United States. Here, we're lucky if we get, I don't know, like 100,000 people, I think is usually where the number's at. In Europe, those races easily have 200 plus thousand people.
It's a
And
religion in
it's
Europe.
a religion. And so these tracks become cities, of
Right.
hundreds of thousands of people. And people come from all over Europe. They ride there, of course, because it's the easiest way to get around. It takes up less space. The idea of motorcycles as transport is a totally different version of what we look at here in the United States. Here, it's for fun. Here, it's a leisure activity. Here, it's for sport. Whereas there, like, you put your camping shit on the back and you ride your sport bike to go to the races, and you camp all weekend and you sleep in the dirt.
Right.
And it's insane. If you've
And
never
there's
been to
like
European MotoGP, I strongly recommend it.
there's like giant sections of the stands dedicated to a rider. Like
Oh God, yeah.
Rossi's fans are insane. All you
Yeah.
see is a sea of yellow, and then they've got
Yep.
these noisemakers that are like car engines with a horn on it that they've
Yep.
got. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's
Definitely a
absolutely
bucket list.
it should be a bucket list for everybody that listens to your podcast and watches this program. It's just phenomenal to go, and there's nothing else like it. But the thing that hooked me on it was not just that, as awesome as that was. It was actually, ironically, leaving the track, because I hadn't really seen, like, myself visually, how many motorcyclists were there until they're all leaving. So I'm in a bus, like a great big huge tour bus, because I was with a company that went and brought all their employees and all that good stuff. So I was with that group. But when you leave the tracks in Europe, all the cars scoot over and make this huge middle lane that's just for motorcyclists. And it's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. Like, it puts our biggest parades to shame. And that's just folks that are just leaving a race weekend. It's no big deal. But
Right.
it just blew my mind how they live with motorcycles in a totally different way than we live with motorcycles here in the US. And so I was fascinated, and I knew I wanted to go see it. So I worked real hard. I saved my pennies. I was OG Kickstarter. I hosted like bike washes. I hosted raffles, whatever I had to do to try to like pull pennies together to make it happen. And I put my bike in a great big box. I sent it with a company called Knopf Tours, which I cannot recommend strongly enough. They're based out of Frankfurt, Germany. I bought myself a plane ticket. I bootstrapped the whole thing, but I mean, of course, it takes a village. So I had the folks from
time
Bob's
for some
BMW.
stupid questions.
Yeah,
Driver's license issue. How does that work?
non-existent. So the way that the licensing works is, as long as you have some sort of like hard copy, nobody really looks at it. So long as you have like your M endorsement and all that good stuff, nobody really looks at it.
Okay.
You can go to AAA, however, and buy I think it's like around $30. And basically what it does is it just translates, and it's a document translating what our United States driver's license says into 4 different other languages, so that way you
Okay.
can travel Europe with it.
Okay.
Pro tip, I always go get it. I've literally never had to show it to anybody, and it's the 10-year anniversary of that European trip, so I went back over this past summer and did it again. Both times I've never had to show that license to anybody. They're just, I don't know. I don't know if it's just because I'm on an old bike and I'm a woman doing it. They think I must mean business.
I'm just wondering if they see a tag from the United States. Like, it's
No.
one thing if you're renting a bike over there.
Yeah.
But if they see a tag from the US, it would like send up some sort of flag or something to
The
look
only
for documents.
The only flag it sent up was actually the exact opposite. It was people that were stoked because they were like, "How are you here from Kentucky? Why
swam."
are you here? Kentucky Fried Chicken." That's all they knew about it.
Right.
Kentucky Derby, The Simpsons, bourbon, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like, that's all they
That's
knew.
so funny. So
But
this summer, did you bring a bike as well, or did you rent?
So no, I shipped that same bike back over.
Oh,
I did
that's
it
awesome.
again on the same bike with the same tour company again, Knopf Tours. I can't name drop them enough because
We'll put
I
the
paid for
notes.
'em.
We'll put their link in the show notes.
I paid for them, but the rad thing is this is all he does, and this is all his family has done for 30 years. So it's completely turnkey. It's utterly painless. You take your bike to Daytona Bike Week. His shipping company is based in Orlando. So last year, I drove my van down with the bike in it. It had been wrenched on. I went and picked it up at Motorworks Chicago, which is my home shop for that bike. It ran like a top. It always does. I can't name drop them enough. Um, but I took it down to Orlando. I dropped it off. I saw him. I haven't seen him in a couple years, but he goes to Daytona every year to pick up bikes for clients and put them in a container and send them to Germany. So it was rad to see him. But it was just like high fives, write him a check, and put your stuff with your bike and label it, and that's it. And then I fly to Frankfurt. I get on the train. I go to his stop, which is in Heidelberg, about 45 minutes south of Frankfurt.
Mm-hmm.
You get off. You can't miss it. Huge America flags, Germany flags, BMW flags, like all over the place. He has your paperwork. The bike's already like been on a battery charger and is ready to go. And that's it. And your stuff is there. So you can send like your
That
gear.
really
So
makes it easy. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's utterly, utterly painless. So if anybody's even thinking about it, here's the breakdown is in Europe to rent a motorcycle, it's about $1,000 a week. So if you're going for any longer than 2 or 3 weeks, it costs the same to ship your own. Like, wouldn't you rather have your own bike and have your own adventures in Europe on a bike that you know and you're totally confident on? I know I would. So
Yeah.
I ended up doing 5 weeks this past year. I shipped it over for the entire month of July and flew back on the 1st of August, literally traded bags and flew directly to Sturgis to go work at Sturgis.
So at some point, it's definitely more cost effective to ship it, because if you stay for 5 weeks and you're paying $1,000 a week, that's $5,000. If the shipping's
Exactly.
three,
Shipping's free. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
To have that luxury of a bike that I'm completely confident on, you know, it had just been gone through by Motorworks Chicago, like I said. So I knew it was running like a top. I knew there wasn't going to be anything weird about it. You know, it's my bike. Like I know I can reach the ground. I'm really short. So rental bikes for me is always a big question mark. Like, what tiny short Harley Davidson am I going to get to ride? Because there's nothing else, you know?
Right.
So, which brings me on to a whole nother rant about motorcycle companies not making short enough motorcycles. But that's a total side note. But anyway.
So what was the scene when you got there? What was the scene like outside of racing? Like the everyday Joe who like hangs out at the local coffee shop with the rest of those buddies. What was it like? Similar to here? Or?
So it was really similar to here, but like amplified because they very rarely. So to go back to the beginning. So I immediately took that bike when I landed 10 years ago, and my first stop, I think it was a race. I think it was Austin again, or another MotoGP type race, or some sort of event. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I did end up at Austin, and I parked my bike. I came out. I couldn't find my bike. I panicked. Everybody had warned me about all this theft and how all these awful things were going to happen. Everybody before you do a big trip loves to fill you up with like all the bad things that are going to happen. And I've got to tell you, literally none of them have ever happened. But I came out. I couldn't find my bike. I was totally gutted. I was exhausted. I'd been traveling. I've been traveling through foreign countries, you know. And I do this like entire lap around Austin, the perimeter, which is huge, looking for a bike. Can't find it. I'm in tears, you know, typical female. I'm all like, I can't find my bike. And then I go back to where I was like, I swear I left my bike here. I go back and there's a crowd of people. And the reason I couldn't find my bike is because there was a crowd of people around my bike. This is at Austin in Holland.
Okay.
And they were just so floored because vintage motorcycles don't live on the roads there. Because of emissions, you can't really ride vintage bikes. You can parade them, you can race them, you can put them in
kidding.
museums,
I didn't know that.
But you can't really have them on the streets. Now, as an American with American plates and American insurance, I get away with it because I know the bike's not staying there. It's not living there, even though it kind of is. But anyway, as a European, you can't really have them on the road except for very special occasions like road rallies or races. So 45-year-old motorcycles just hanging out at the racetrack is completely like this is a bike that people would only see in the museums. And then it had Kentucky historical plates on it. And then a sweaty American woman in all leathers in the middle of a heat wave like an idiot. You know, I just was like a carnival of stupid shit to look at. Who is
this weirdo from the States, right?
Yeah, and they did. And so this is exactly what happened. And that brings me to your question of like, what is the huge difference, or was there a difference in those communities? So I would come out and people would be like, this is yours? Where's, you know, your husband or your man or your boyfriend that rides this bike? And I'd be like, no, this is, you know, I'll pull the helmet on and get on it. Like, this is my bike. And they'd be like, wow, that's unbelievable. Why are you here? And I said, well, I'm writing a blog. You know, this is the Wayback Machine. This is the beginnings of the internet, basically. There was no Facebook. There was MySpace, however. But I was doing a blog off of it. And that's how I was generating eyeballs and getting article contacts and things, was this blog, and it would get repopped and sent around forums. Remember forums in the Wayback Machine?
Oh yeah.
Okay, it would get sent to all these forums all over the place, and people would come and click through and read the story. So I just said, you know, my name is Jackie Van Ham. I had a little business card made up, and I'm like, you know, I'm here. I'm writing these stories for BMW Owners News Magazine as well as my blog. And the guy would, it was mostly men, not gonna lie. The guy would be like, I think you're crazy. And I'd be like, well, maybe I am, but I need a couch to sleep on. Like, can I sleep at on your couch? Can I sleep on your floor? And they'd be like, okay, I think you're definitely crazy, but let me call my wife and see if it's okay. And they would call. The wife would be like, okay, like there's some crazy American woman riding around writing stories about it. Like, okay. Well, in the meanwhile, you know, of that all occurring, he would also have called his buddies and be like, oh, there's this crazy American woman riding around on this old bike. You should meet her. And we would get to the house, and the wife would have cooked some awesome little meal of whatever the local food was. And the buddies and bros would all be there, and we would drink beers and tell stories. So every night I was kind of like singing for my supper. But at those like garage meetups, they'd be like, where have you been? Where are you going? I'd be like, you know, tomorrow I'm going to go to Brno to go to World Superbike, Czech Republic. Oh, I have a cousin that lives there. Hold on. And they would call their cousin and like, okay, here's his address. This is where you're going. This is where you're staying tomorrow. And that happened for 3 full months. I did that. I only paid for 5 nights of accommodation in youth hostel.
That's crazy.
I stayed with motorcyclists the entire time.
It sounds so much like the experience you and McGregor had the long way around when they were in like Eastern Europe, and this guy's like, come back to my house, you know?
Yeah. No, it's completely true. This is just how motorcyclists are worldwide. Right. But they would also just be so floored. Again, you know, it was the old bike. Maybe that was part of it. It was maybe that I was a woman doing it was part of it. But the other thing is they were like, we're so pumped to see an American here, because Americans don't come over here. We don't see it, because that's true. You know, what percentage of Americans have passports? The number is like abysmal, but they don't see Americans enough. So they were just super pumped that.
Yeah. And you know, Jackie too, you have a very affable personality. Like you, when people meet you for the first time, it's like meeting an old friend.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
And it makes it easy for people to talk to you and you to talk to people. You're not like standoffish or, you know, suspecting, or you just like this really like, oh, there's my sister. Check her out, man. You know, she's really cool.
Right on. I appreciate that. But it's also the fact that we were talking about a total mutual common language and common love, which is bikes.
Absolutely.
Because that's all I did for the entire 3 months. I did like art museums. Nope. Like cultural things. Nope. All I did was motorcycle events, races, and transportation museums. That was it. Because I had to focus, or else I would have moved there. You know, like I would have lived there for forever. So I had to really focus and make it just be about the bikes. So
was that the start of it for you? That first trip for blogging and like writing? Is your background in journalism?
No, I've done a little bit of communication studies. I didn't graduate. Of course, that was during the era of like school loans going through the roof. Mm-hmm. And I just was like, you know what? If I'm going to jump into this, so many people have to start down here and do freelance and work their way up. Like, I'm just going to jump in and just do it. I've always been that kind of person. I just jump in. I'm kind of fearless in that way. So I figured if this is what I want to do, I'm just going to grab the bull by the horns and do it. So I had already run a blog. Like I said, used to be called The Vintage Advantage. It's dead now, but it was called The Vintage Advantage. And I would blog about the ARMA, American Historical Racing Motorcycle Association, the ARMA races that I would go to, some of the museums. I had the chance to go over to EICMA, which is the world's largest motorcycle trade show. So I was still kind of providing just coverage of motorcycling events whenever I could luck out and scrape together some pennies and throw some toothpaste and underwear in a backpack and go do stuff. So that was the beginning of it. And because of that, I was able to kind of parlay that into writing for magazines. Mm-hmm. And then once you bump to the magazine level, it gives you, at least back then, it gave you a little bit more legitimacy, because blogging and the internet was like, this is a fad. This will never last. Like,
right.
You know, you have to publish. It has to be print media. So
And look where
That
that
was the
went.
beginning of that. But
Yeah.
so the trip in Europe was amazing. That turned into several magazine articles because, again, people would see my blog and they would just repop it all over the place, Europe and here. And it ended up getting a cover and a 5-page feature in Classic Bike, which for vintage motorcycle nerds, like that's the holy grail, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just about fell over and died when Gary Inman reached out and said he wanted to do an interview and feature me and all that cool stuff. And I was really pumped about that. But then that got repopped into several different European versions of that and some American stuff as well. I came back from the trip and was around. I came back just in time for MotoGP here in the United States. At the time, I think it was the first year of Indy, or maybe the second year of Indy, when they were still running Indy MotoGP. I was traveling around just a tiny little bit doing some fall type stuff. I don't really remember, to be honest, but I can tell you that I did end up at the International Motorcycle Show Series in Chicago, and I went there on purpose in order to go to some of the companies that had helped me out with my trip. I did
Mhm.
not receive cash from anybody because getting cash is just about impossible. But companies will always give you helmets and things and stuff. You know, it doesn't cost them anything. It's good promo, you know, whatever. Like they'll always throw helmets and leathers at you. So I had a company that had helped out with some technical undergarments and a helmet. And I went to the International Motorcycle Show to go thank them and then show them, you know, the magazine and be like, here's your ROI for the marketing geeks. Here's your return on investment
Mhm.
for that helmet. And they said, well, clearly you love to travel. Clearly you're pretty fearless. You clearly love to talk. Do you want to come out and represent our brand here at these trade shows? And so this would have been 2008.
Mhm.
And at that time, there was very, very, very few women working professionally in the motorcycle trade show space. They were absolutely still women that were being paid to be, models,
Booth bunnies.
to be booth candy.
Yeah.
But there was not really women professionally talking about products and things and gear and stuff, and especially not ones that were under the age of like 50. So I did an entire circuit with them. I stuck out like a sore thumb because I just was different. You know, I just totally I literally just was completely different from what had normally been floating around. And so other companies started to come calling, and they'd realized how much work I put in. And I showed up every day at 6 a.m. with a Starbucks and a smile and said good morning to everybody. I drove the truck, I loaded the product in and out, I did inventory, I pitch sold it all weekend, and I drove to the next location the following weekend. So I had other companies luckily start knocking on my door, and that was the beginning of kind of like a hired gun industry for trade
Right.
show. Now it's super super common, but at the time I kind of helped start that
It's
space.
funny because that concept, I remember years ago going to like car shows and you always have, some booth bunny in there. And then for a long time, I was involved in the dive industry and the shooting industry. And there's like DEMA, the trade show for diving, the SHOT Show for shooting. And you always have these, again, booth bunnies that just hand out literature. They don't really know anything. But my background's in the fire service, and there's a woman from Miami-Dade Fire Department that started a female firefighters calendar out of Miami-Dade that would benefit the burn foundations. And what she did was, it was so innovative, is because these women that posed in these calendars were lieutenants, captains, actual working firefighters. They would go to the large fire department trade shows and, not dressed inappropriately, but, you have a pretty face standing in the booth. And then somebody
Yeah,
comes up to talk to them. And not only that, this is a person who's worked on the truck, used your product, can talk
yeah,
about it, has a lot of
brilliant.
knowledge. So pretty soon you got guys going, hey, you see that girl over there in that booth, the really good looking one over there? She's actually a captain on an engine at Miami-Dade
Yeah,
and use that saw. Go talk to her about it. So, and I think the face draws people there, but once you start to talk to that person and realize how much knowledge they have and they can give you a direct user, feedback, that's when
yeah,
the hook comes,
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting and completely that's a really interesting conversation to be having out here because you're right. In the trade show industry, in a lot of industries, there is the use of booth babes and booth candy, and it's just a pretty face. But like I said, it's tricky because I'm not ever going to say folks shouldn't have jobs. I'm always pro, have a job. This is what you do for a
Right.
living. And Lord knows, here's the way I also explain it when people want to try to pit me versus them, because what I do is completely different. I'm like, I don't want to wear 5-inch heels and tiny clothes and not get to eat all weekend. Like, that's not what I want. Like, If this girl wants to do that job, that's awesome. But does she want to hold a microphone and memorize all the specs and details about this engine? I bet you she doesn't either. So there's room for both of us. They got to do what they got to do. I got to do what I got to do. But I do agree with you that I think it benefits everybody to have a little bit more knowledge about the product and about what you're talking about. And it certainly is. It's become a career for me. So at the time it started out, and it still is for me, independent contractor gigs. It's just picking up work. I work for myself, which is rad. I have done so since 2010, which is pretty outstanding. Over the past 6 years, though, I've pivoted a little bit of what I do, and it's less, driving the truck and pitch hustling and doing that. And they've made the huge mistake of putting a microphone in my hand. So now I represent brands, and I announce, and I do MC work. I also do a little bit of race commentary. I did last season for American Flat Track Racing. I'm going
Yeah,
to be
we were
heading
going to talk about that. That was cool.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really loved it. That was such a really, really cool, neat thing for me.
You
That
fit really
was
well into that role too, Jackie.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I was stoked because 2 or 3 years ago, I did the announcing for the Super Hooligan Race Series, which is Roland Sands Design and Indian Motorcycles Hooligan Race Series. It's called Super Hooligan. That's their trademark. That's their logo.
Mhm.
I did that announcing in Austin, Texas, and the folks from American Flat Track Racing, which at the time was called AMA Pro Flat Track, were hosting a race there, and they came to the Super Hooligan races and happened to be with a buddy of mine named Mike, and they were like, who is this woman? Like who like, because I just had a great time. It's a totally different beast. It's laid back, it's casual. I just basically was talking smack about all my buddies that were racing that afternoon and just having a great time and cutting up and telling jokes and some behind the scenes. And this person just smashed their bike and they had to fix it real fast, and trying to doing color commentary. And
Mhm.
they were like, who is this woman? Like, how do we get her to come do announcing for us without even seeing me? Which is the biggest compliment. I don't It's tough to be a woman in motorsport because it is such a physicality based thing. I mean, let's not play games here. Most of the women who do have a microphone in their hand are fitness models, literally, or Miss Americas, or Miss Sprint Cup, or that's what they do. That's the woman's role in motorsport as far as announcing goes. I, however, am not that again. So I was pumped to be recognized for my work. And then they finally made me an offer last season. I was able to pick up 6 of the races and had a great time. I had a blast. And I tried to bring a little bit more knowledge to it. I tried to bring a little bit more motorcycle riding to it because I do ride and I have flat track raced. So I tried my best to bring those sorts of elements to the broadcast.
Yeah,
Um,
you always look like you're having fun doing it.
and I always have fun
Yeah.
doing it. Yeah, I
And it's
always have it.
genuine, it comes
Yeah.
across. So
It does.
listen, I think anytime it's always a plus when there's a pretty face, but even more so when that pretty face is knowledgeable and has experience. And I guess any male dominated sport, there's either that one guy that's like, I shouldn't know what she's talking about, she's a chick, and then you find out that chick's ridden across the world.
I get that all the time.
Yeah, like and the guy's like, oh, I just drive to the bar every night, like I don't even know how to change oil in my bike.
Yeah. I can't
So
even
I
tell you how
love
many,
seeing that. Yeah.
yeah, I can't even tell you how many private messages I got after the beginning of American Flat Track Racing. I did not get picked up for this season again, unfortunately, but I do other announcing. We'll get to that in just a second. But last year with AFT, because the American Flat Track people had never seen me, just because I did announcing. And Scotty Dubler, who's the regular announcer for American Flat Track Racing, is really awesome and bitchin'. And he went out of his way to come meet me last year before season at the Dallas International Motorcycle Show, just because my name had been floating around as a possible candidate. And he just wanted to come meet me and come see what I do. So he came and saw me announce and do the announcing that I do professionally for corporations at the International Motorcycle Show. And I came down off the stage and went over and said hi, because of course I know who he is. And he was like, that was amazing. How did you do that? Like, I could never do that. And I said, well, this is what I do. I know I'm new to you and to the AFT space, but I've been doing this, holding down brands and talking and spreading these kind of messages for almost 10 years now out here. This is not my first hayride. So when I started doing AFT, I did get a little bit of pushback because I am enthusiastic. I do, try to bring different conversations to the broadcast. But that being said, I also got a lot of private messages and slid into my DMs. How people were like, at first I didn't know where the hell you came from. I'm not gonna lie, like I just thought you were some like weird chick with tattoos and glasses. But now I realize like you really know what you're talking about. Like
Yeah,
you
you can
really know
back it up.
motorcycles.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the best part about it. That's not really a a gender thing either. Like
Yeah.
you'll always have this person that is like new to the scene, and you're like, "What's this guy's background?" And then you find out, "Oh man, the guy did this, this, and this. He's been around a while." And
Yeah.
for I think for our community too, it's not about as much like education that you had or things like that. It's what your experience has been like and how people from other communities talk about you. Like, "Oh, yeah, I know Jackie. We did this, and she's great." So that holds a lot more weight for me when it comes to the motorcycle community
Oh gosh,
is
yeah.
yeah. I mean, and the funny thing is it's not a really huge community. We kind of know each other.
It's this big.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody. So
Yeah. I mean, I
it's
found that out a long time ago. And
yeah. It's funny how small world it is, and then vintage in particular is like this tiny itty bitty segment of motorcycling. Because of the opportunities I've had professionally, I was able to jump more into like the V twin space, which led to in a way more of the flat track racing space because Indian was getting back into flat track racing 2 or 3 seasons ago.
so what's
So
your favorite type of racing?
I
If you
love
had
all
to
the
pick.
wheels. I love all the wheels, man. I don't. I mean, I am really partial to flat track racing currently, but
Yeah.
I love MotoGP. I follow MotoGP. I love American and Moto America racing. I'm a
Flat track's
huge
very intimate.
JD Beach fan. Flat track racing is
You get
very,
dirt, you
very,
get
very
dirt
much
sprayed on you,
literally.
Yeah.
It's so like visceral
Right.
that. Because you're a part of it, you hear it, you feel it. Literally, you go deaf from it. I love that part of it, but the thing I also love about the American Flat Track Race family is I say family on purpose because it's so close knit, and it literally is families. Like so and so is married to so and so who races, who's the dad of so and so, and like it's so connected. It reminds me so much of vintage racing. It reminds me so much of Arma. I
Right.
love that about it. I fell for it hook, line, and sinker the first time I went. Everybody welcomes you with open arms. Are you hungry? Do you need a place to sit? Like it's that same kind of vibe in the paddock, which is really amazing. Even at the very, very pro level, it's very much like that. Now, the thing that I'm really enjoying right now is, again, like I'd mentioned, I've done commentary for the Super Hooligan Race Series, which is the Roland Sands designed Indian motorcycle hooligan race program. But I did get picked up and I did the racing for Flat Out Friday in February up in Milwaukee as part of the Mama Tried weekend. And that's the Harley Davidson backed Mama Tried Flat Out Friday, their hooligan race program.
Mhm.
I'm a huge fan of that race. If you've never had a chance to
Is
go,
it limited to Harley Davidson or
no,
any?
not at all, not at all. So you have to put
Okay.
that on your bucket list. So that weekend in particular, it's in February. It's in Milwaukee. It's part of Mama Tried, which is an invitational custom bike show. It's awesome. It's a
I'll
phenomenal
have to
show.
go. Yeah, I actually
And
have
then
family in Milwaukee 'cause I'm from Chicago too,
okay, so yeah,
originally,
same
yeah.
Midwest folks. So the neat thing though is on Friday night they rent out. It has been Panther Arena and Bradley Arena. They alternated now. It's at Panther Arena, University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Panther Arena. So they sell it out. That's
Mhm.
how big it is. It sells out an arena, and it's an indoor race series. They put it's either Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper syrup on the floor to make it sticky because it's concrete. They don't bring in dirt. It's
What?
concrete. Yeah, they put
That's
syrup on.
crazy.
Yeah. So in the Wayback Machine, this was a normal thing for especially northern communities that can't race all year because the weather's garbage, right?
Oh,
So
I
they
totally
started
didn't know
push.
that.
So in the Wayback Machine, they would race cars. They would race like all sorts of crazy things indoor in these indoor arenas on concrete with pop syrup on the floor in order to make it tacky so you can hook up and get some
Oh,
traction.
I totally never knew that. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So they revamped it and came across this idea. The gentleman that runs that program is named Jeremy Prock. He's phenomenal. He's amazing. He was doing research because he knew he wanted to run some sort of flat track type race, but in order to move in all that tonnage of dirt would have just cost, I think, like $100,000 or something crazy. Like it was some
Right.
crazy number to get dirt brought in, laid down, and then brought back out again. So he started doing his research and found out about these in the Wayback Machine indoor races and kicked it off and is doing it now. So This race, though, like I said, it's huge. It sells out this arena. It's got the hooligan classes, which are predominantly Harley Davidson, because it is the most accessible bike right now. Though that race is run mostly with Sportsters. I think you have to be like 2000 and above, or maybe like 1990 and above Sportsters, and you can buy one of those for $1,500. You know, they cost nothing. So that's mostly what that is. It's 750cc and above twin cylinder class.
Okay.
Anything that fits into that category, you can run it. It just mostly happens to be Sportsters, especially for that race, and especially because it's Milwaukee, and especially because it's Harley Davidson sponsored. But
Yeah, absolutely.
they
Right.
have that class. They run a women's class. They run an amateur class. They run a run what you brung class, which is also the costume class, where people like dress up their bikes and put like lights and sirens and cannons.
So how long does this
confetti
series
and, like,
last?
so this series started, I think it's like fourth or fifth year of doing that race in particular at Milwaukee. They've run a couple of different other races throughout the summer at different locations. I think, fingers crossed, they're trying to expand that program, because I would love to be a part of it. But last year they ran it at an event called Fuel Cleveland at the end of July. They run it always at February during Mama Tried weekend. They've run it the past, I think this is the second year of running it in Maryville, Tennessee, as part of the Smoky Mountain Harley Davidson weekend.
Mhm.
Smoky Mountain Harley Davidson is a huge, very, very significant dealership down in the Smokies. It's beautiful country. It's beautiful riding. They host this cool event, and they run a flat track race also. So I'm going to be going down there and doing the color commentary for that next weekend. And it's not firmed up, but there's some rumors. I can put it that way. There's some rumors about possibly doing a race out in Sturgis this year, which I would really, really be
Wow,
stoked
that'd be
about.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sturgis also, I mean, that leads me into a whole nother conversation about the changing face of motorcycling and the changing face of V-twin. There's these great big huge dinosaur rallies. One is Daytona down by you, one is Sturgis. I call them dinosaur not as a slag. It's just that they've been around a really, really, really long time. And those consumers and the folks that go to those rallies are getting a little older and maybe aren't riding motorcycles so much. So the numbers start to slide down. So what do you do to bring younger people in? Well, the past several years, they've been bringing in different demographics of concerts at some of the big concert venues, especially out at Sturgis. But they've also been bringing in flat track and hooligan style racing, which has been really incredible. So as much as people want to talk about, whenever I tell folks that I'm going to Sturgis, they're like, ha, 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 naked lady, coleslaw, wrestling,
Right.
getting
Right.
drunk
Right.
and
Right.
falling in the dirt. I'm like, well, actually, Sturgis was founded on hill climb racing and dirt track racing, and there still is a lot of that there. There
So
still
is
is.
Bike Week. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All of this is based on racing, is the actual roots of it. Now they've just turned into kind of a big party, which is cool. But I love to kind of remember, and I love that there's this resurgence and re-interest back in racing. They're running races at these concert venues, and it's folks that, I think a year or two ago, I went to the Super Hooligan race at Buffalo Chip, which is an awesome venue, and they do a hell of a great time out there, and it's a fun place. But I had some woman next to me that was like, drinking her beer. She's like, I don't know what the hell this is, but this is amazing. Was just stoked about it.
Right.
And that's the quote of the day for the 20,000 people that were there. None of them knew what the hell was going on. They don't follow this, but you better believe they were super into it. Like they thought it was a great time.
Well,
and they
let's be honest. It's much more fun to watch than a burnout contest.
I mean, yeah, burnout contests are kind of fun too. I mean,
I'd rather sit there and watch the bikes,
yeah.
Actually sparring and racing than
agreed.
a guy making smoke until his tire pops. But
fair enough. That is. I totally agree with you. Unless it's an amazing bike and they like blow it up or hand grenade it, then I'm kind of into watching that. But
like a motor blows, yeah, this is really great.
I mean, that amuses me. But
I used to be a fixture at Bike Week, and the more that when the 200 stopped running, and like I remember going for the entire series of AMA racing back then, when you had Battle of the Twins and all these other classes that were running over the weekends. I hung out at the track. I would either camp at the track or stay nearby, and you had like a lot more. And I don't know, maybe this is changing, but back then, like I remember one year I brought my V-Strom and GV was there, and I had everything installed right there at the track. Bought all the boxes, had everything installed. It was really cool.
Yep.
It seems like that went away for a little while, and I'm hoping that that kind of comes back, because I'll like avoid Main Street. That's just not my gig.
Yeah.
I don't, maybe one
Yeah.
day to go down there and people watch, but I'm not really into that.
I'll usually go
Um,
down there like one night on the last night and relax, have
yeah,
a
it
couple
just,
couple beers with my buddies. But yeah, agreed. Like that's not normally my scene either. But you're right. Daytona has changed. Daytona is changing. The 200 has not gone away. The 200 is there. People just don't know about it. ARMA went away, however, which was the Battle of the Twins and some of those type races. ARMA
right.
quit running. ARMA used to run, again, American Historical Racing Motorcycle Association used to run at the very, very, very beginning opening weekend of Daytona Bike Week. I know because I used to go. And it was international style racing. People would come from all over the world for the chance to race on the high banks on their vintage machines. It was absolutely incredible. They did Battle of the Twins. They did Sound of Thunder. They did Sound of Singles. It was
They were
makes
all
my, makes
really
my arm
cool
hair stand
stuff.
up. They
Yeah.
would do all this rad stuff, and then the Daytona 200 has always been the following weekend.
Right.
So, and then Supercross runs on the Saturday in between. So that's always been the schedule for the Daytona 200, and it still is there. This crowd, the crowds don't go, unfortunately, because most people that go to Daytona don't even know about the racing anymore. I've literally told people, I've offered tickets to people because we'll end up with sometimes spare tickets laying around. I've offered to give them to folks, and they're like, "The 200, what's that?"
Yeah, that
Because
was a premier
they've
race,
wrapped because they've wrapped up the Daytona experience so much into the experience. It's not about the racing anymore. The beginning of it was the racing back in the 30s or 40s or whenever it first started.
on the beach. Yeah.
1937 is when it started. 1937 they moved it to the Speedway in 1959 or
Right.
1960, I believe. So now the Speedway, that's another kind of conversation, because yes, there used to be more vendors there and people used to come to the races more, but now that the races have died off, the vendors don't see the value in spending all that money to be there. So now a lot of those vendors are setting up in just different locations. It's not that they've stopped, they've just moved. So a lot more vendors are up at Bruce Rossmeyer's, up at Destination Daytona.
Right. Or the
There's a
BMW
huge
dealership. Yeah.
vendor corral way up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool stuff up there. It's changed, but Daytona has to change. All of these old dinosaur rallies have to change because the demographic, like I said, is getting long in the tooth and kind of literally dying off. So they have to kind of rethink how they're going to start bringing the younger generation. It's a little too expensive for most people under the age of, that aren't retired and have some sort of income like that
Right.
coming in. It's really expensive to be there. It's a lot of money. And I don't know if the entertainment is the same. And so anyway, so you just have to kind of like pick your battles and go dig through it, do your research about it. But there's anything you wanna imagine or see happens at Daytona and Sturgis, for right or for wrong, for good or for bad.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Anything happens, anything goes at both of those places.
It's a
So
crazy time.
yeah,
Sturgis I've never been to, but Daytona I've been going to for years and years, both Bike Week and Biketoberfest.
yeah.
And yeah, you'll see things that happen at Daytona that are just like, did I just see that group of guys on Hayabusas and every girl in the back of them is wearing a thong? Like what? And then
Yeah.
I've actually been to Black Bike Week a couple times, like one block over, because a bunch of guys I work with, we met out there. And if you want to have the best food in Daytona, usually the vendors there by far are cooking fresh. They're cooking barbecue. The food's incredible there. And it's not like, you go to the track and you buy the contract food that they sell there through that. Yeah, exactly. But you find these little areas where people have a food truck or a booth set up and they're cooking fresh, and man, it's great.
Yeah. But Sturgis is a little slightly different beast. But again, it's anything goes for sure. I love that they've added racing, a lot more racing and kind of hooligan style racing to it. I think that helps bring in younger people. Michael Lichter's Invitational Custom Bike Show is always a highlight of the entire Sturgis week for me, because it's the best of the best, or it's new, it's upcoming people, upcoming builders. So it is a little bit younger crowd. It is a little bit more, fresh and new and not quite so stodgy old V twin. And It's a really, really good time. It's a neat thing.
It's
Again,
something I want
unfortunately,
to
it's
do for
you
sure.
should.
Yeah.
Again, unfortunately, it is quite expensive. I'm sure there's a better way to skin that cat and do it for less money, but I haven't quite figured out how to do that.
What do you
And
mean
luck,
expensive? Like, I mean, you just can't go there and
I
set up
mean,
a
just like
tent,
a
or
food. There's no, you can, but just like even a chicken sandwich off of the food trucks is $15.
oh,
Like
okay, I got
just to
you.
live is expensive.
I got
But
you.
no, but absolutely, if you're into camping and you can figure that out and get your food and cook, then yes, then the price changes drastically. But entrance into any of the concert venues, because the way that Sturgis works is it's all these huge compounds and it's all inclusive. So you buy the wristband for the day, which can cost, I mean, I don't know, 50 to $100. And then you get to see the concert. You get to see if there's racing, you get to see the racing.
I
It's all
gotcha.
of that stuff. But I mean, it can add up. If you want to go to a couple nights of going to those events, I mean, that's what, 300, $400 like that, just to go
Right,
see a
right,
couple of
right.
bands play.
Yeah.
Or you can stay in camp at those places. And anyway, like I said, there's a way to figure it out. I just haven't figured it out. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit of a diva and I like to sleep inside. So I'm still paying full pop for for
No,
accommodations out
look,
there.
there's a
But
lot to be said about having a bed. I
yeah,
mean, the last time I went to Daytona with a bunch of buddies we have a pretty active Patreon community, and as part of their perk for being on Patreon, they get access to Slack that's just
oh
private for the group.
yeah,
And we got together and went to Daytona, not this year, last year, and camped in a campground. And that night it was like 32.
yep.
So we, my buddy who was there, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, Doug, are you up? And he's like, yeah, I'm freezing. We got dressed and we went and we sat in a Waffle House for like 4 hours just because we,
Oh
we
my
were so cold.
god.
So we ate like
Oh,
steak and eggs and waited for the track to open up, and then went and did some demo rides. But
see, that's what I'm saying. I'm all about the
I,
indoor creature
I
comforts.
kind of
But
like that though, too. Like that's part of the experience for me. It
yeah.
makes it fun. But, and then ever since I learned one pot cooking from Lisa Thomas,
Oh,
um,
perfect.
yeah, and you can easily go to the store, buy some ingredients, and I'll like make a nice meal in one pot without having to go spend a
That's
bunch
the
of money.
best. That's the
Yeah.
best. Yeah, I just got back from a trip, kind of similar ideas. Like I said, I'm not really into camping, but I did buy a rad, huge old Dodge van a couple of years back, and we finally got it set up so it's got a fold-out bed in it and curtains, and like it's like nice, and you can stay in it. You can haul a couple of dirt bikes in it. We just
Yeah.
got back from doing a trip down into Georgia, the very, very top of Florida, and then Alabama, going to do some off-road parks and sleeping at the off-road parks and riding dirt bikes during the
Yeah.
day. And we had an awesome time. So
Nice.
now my mind has kind of come around to like, that's how I camp, is like in a van.
That's still, I mean, you got like a hotel on wheels and you have all the
Yeah.
luxuries. I met a guy, I do the polar bear rally in North Florida, and I met this guy that bought like a Dodge Sprinter stripped, nothing inside of it, just like a work truck. And he built it out himself. So he had like the section in the middle for his adventure bike, but then he had beds and a kitchen and a shower and
I
everything. And
know,
this guy
right?
like had it completely rigged. It was great. And he
Yeah.
didn't spend, like 200 grand buying a camper from somebody.
That's
I
what I'm
think he even
saying.
bought the Sprinter used. Like he brought a used work
Yeah.
Sprinter and did all the work himself. It was really neat.
Oh yeah, I'm pumped about it. Like I bought this old van for $1,600, and I'm like, I'm ready to like rock and roll and see America in it now. Like I've got plans to take this thing to Mexico. I can't wait. But
Yeah, that's
I love it
cool.
because I can sleep in it. I can bring my dog. I can bring the bikes. We can cook out. We had a blast. We had a really, really lovely, really good time. And so now my mind's kind of opened up to that a little bit. And I think that that's kind of the future of motorcycling. Like at the beginning of the show, you said, what do you think about like the future of where's this industry headed? Motorcycling as an industry is in a bit of a downturn, and it has been for years now. I
We've
mean,
been
let's
talking
not,
about that for a
yeah,
while. Yeah.
let's not play games out here. It has been in a downturn for multiple reasons. One is I think that they're making the wrong bikes. That's just my opinion. I think the bikes are too big. I think that they're too expensive. I think Americans can't really afford those machines, as well as the largest market for motorcycling, which is Asia.
Yeah, I
I
agree
think
completely.
I think that we also have missed now, we're heading into our third generation of kids not being raised on dirt bikes and on smaller displacement machines. In the 1970s, all up until about the 70s, I would say, it was super common for you to have a dirt bike in your garage and you rode it and your mom and dad and you and your brother and sister went and camped and you wrapped around on these little bikes or maybe just rode them around in your backyard or whatever. I think that was a very, very common story. But in the 1970s, the motorcycle manufacturers decided to start pivoting and wanted to make more money. And it was the beginning of the race for high horsepower. It was the beginning of superbike era.
Mhm.
So bikes drastically changed. There was more of an emphasis on bigger and faster and more expensive. And then that just became kind of the realm of dad. That's the only guy that would really ride that bike, right? So where's the rest of the family? The rest of the family ain't gonna ride that bike. So now I know I was raised on in power sports a little bit, but folks that are any younger than me, they don't ride. They weren't raised on dirt bikes. They
It's
don't know
not
how
just
to
not
ride.
riding dirt bikes, Jackie. They don't want to get their driver's license. I mean,
Oh,
I sat at 15, the day I turned 15, having my
yeah,
mom drive me to the driver's license bureau to get my restricted. And then as soon as I turned 16, I already had a car before I turned
yeah,
16. Like I was chomping at the bit for that freedom. The generation now, and I know this firsthand, is they just don't care. Like they don't want to. I know kids that are 20 that never learn how to drive.
yeah.
And I don't understand, like they're missing out on such a big part of their youth, or maybe it's too expensive. But I mean, you can still buy a car for under $1,000. You know what I mean? They're still out there. And
But
even
then, but
bikes.
then, but then, do they have the skills to repair and maintain them? Do they
No,
have? Do they have the
no,
things to
because
back it
that's
up?
gone. That's
Yeah,
absolutely gone. And if you look at, like, I don't know how it was in your generation because I'm older than you are, but when I was in high school, you had auto shop. You
yes,
had it was normal, and even though I didn't, like, make a career out of that, I took one class of auto shop. I learned a lot of basics, how to change brakes, how to, stuff like that. Not only the fact my dad taught me how to change oil and just basic maintenance. Now that everything's gone kind of like tech and computer, that's all gone. You
yeah.
don't have any trades anymore taught in high school. So these kids can't turn a wrench. Or
For sure. I
yeah.
agree. But I also am not going to put the blame entirely on them because they didn't make the decision to not
No,
have
no,
skilled
no.
trades in high
Yeah.
school anymore. And actually, I think that there is a definite interest in skilled and hand trades. I think folks want this information. They want to learn it. I think that maybe they're a little bit intimidated by how to ask for it. It's embarrassing to say
Maybe.
you
Yeah.
don't know how to fix something. I very rarely have men ask me for help with things. Women, sure. Like we're kind of open to that. But I think that it's just a cultural shift, and I do wish it would shift back. I do think that it will shift back, and
Well,
I think
it's also caused a giant vacuum in those careers.
correct, and that's why I think it
Yeah.
is going to shift back. I think we are going to see more emphasis on that again, or at least trickling out. There's neat programs. A friend of mine, Brian Shaffron, up in Cleveland, is starting a mobile shop class.
Mhm.
He got some. I don't know if he bootstrapped it or kickstarted it or got some money from sponsorship or how exactly he's doing it, but he runs a community garage up in Cleveland. And
Mhm.
as opposed to just also having that community garage, which these are also popping up all over the United States. I don't know if they've hit your neck of the woods yet, but these are popping up all over the place. And the reason why those are important is because it is a place to come and ask the questions and look a little dumb. And I don't, I don't know how to rebuild my brakes, or I don't know what my forks do, or I
Yeah,
don't
I
know how to
think
do this. And so there's a little bit of an uptick in that, but he's taken it one step further and wants to make it in a mobile truck and drive it around to high schools and different events and start teaching hand skills that way. And I think that that's really something that should be applauded and definitely encouraged.
I think that, and I'm not speaking for all of them, but the mobile, not the mobile, but the community garages, the part that I have a hard time with is the monthly model. So, especially if I only want to go there occasionally to do something, like I need a certain set of tools or I need a lift or something like that. I'm not a builder and I'm not constantly wrenching on bikes, so I don't need to be paying for that monthly.
Right.
If they would include something where I could pay for the time as I need it,
Yeah.
or even taking the classes. Like I would take the classes without paying for the monthly model. I understand why they do that, because they need an income to keep the doors open.
Right.
Um,
I think that there's a couple of them that do offer those types of programs, though. You know, again, they're all pretty much individually owned, and so all of them have a little bit different version of what they're up
yeah,
to. Like I know my buddies out in LA at Lucky Wheels Garage, they do a version of that where you can just rent for the time of your project. You know, if you've
right.
got to bleed your brakes or whatever you got to do, like they will rent you a bench
And
for that
and to be
long.
honest with you, I wouldn't even mind paying extra for some assistance. Like if it's something I've
Yeah,
never done before, but I want to take that challenge on, I wouldn't mind paying for the assistance of the, the tech that's there working
yeah,
to teach me how to do it. Like I'll pay for the rental, the whatever specialized tools I don't have, and then the instruction and the guy to help me. That I'm
yeah. I
totally
would.
down with that.
I mean, if this is something that you're interested in, go to your local community garage and pitch them. Or just,
Well,
or
the thing
first
is,
of all,
we don't.
ask if they do it. Secondly, pitch them and say, hey, I have a group of dudes that I ride with. We would love to come here and take a clinic on how to do this thing. And what do you
Yeah, we
guys
don't
think about
really
that?
have one in South Florida, other than there might be one in Miami, and I know that Jason Paul Michaels has got a place in Orlando
Yes.
that he's kind of like shifted from a couple different models, and I need to actually call him and find out what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
The last time I was there, it was really funny. It was something the Ace Cafe was doing. They were doing a promotional thing, and Jason and I have talked about it, and I went over to go see him, and I couldn't get to him. Like there were guys in the shop that are like, well, he's really busy right now. I'm like, go give him my card and tell him I'm here. And we're like, no, he's really busy. I'm like, all right, fine. Like I drove 3 hours to talk to the guy, but whatever.
But that's cool. No problem.
Yeah, it's just
no, I've known Jason for a couple of years also, and yeah, he's pretty hard dude to pin down. I feel like the only way I could kind of get a hold of him, and that's even on sometimes, is like text. And that's
yeah, no, and that's that. It's just tough because he had so many side projects going on, and I know that
he does have strong side hustle for sure.
Yeah, with Standard Motorcycle Co. That was a great idea, and he tried to get a library funded where he would have on demand video classes. Like if you wanted to do a carburetor rebuild, you could actually go online and plug that in, and there's a whole class on it. Not just some guy you don't really know who it is on YouTube. It's comes from him, and that kind of had a hard time getting going. There wasn't enough funding there for that, but I know he's got other things in the works. I need to talk to him about it.
Yeah,
Now,
I think he
community
turned it into a
garage here would be
barbershop.
great. Huh?
I think he's doing a barbershop out of that space now. Like one of
Really?
those like gentlemen's, drink
those
craft
are
beer and get your beer
all over the place
done.
here.
I think that's what he's doing now with that. I'm not 100%, but that's the last time I saw there was something
There's
about
I go to a
haircutting.
place in Jupiter, which is not too far from me here, that a buddy of mine owns, and he's got his chopper out front, and skateboards on the wall inside.
That's
It's
cool.
really kind of cool. Yeah. Plus the guys, all the guys who are working there are really great barbers, so it's fun to go.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm hoping that we've talked about this a lot, about the industry and the downturn and the lack of younger people getting involved. And I think you're right. I do think the bikes are intimidating. I think there's not enough in the, smaller and mid displacement bikes that are, and I don't like to say learner bikes, because they're really not. It's just what's comfortable for you to ride.
Yeah. But here's what I think has the potential to save motorcycling. E-bikes. Everybody gets all up in arms when you talk about electric bikes, but I really am a firm, huge believer in them being possibly, hopefully.
So am I.
Not, I don't want to say the salvation, but I think they're going to take an awful lot of big OEMs' lunch money unless they get hip to the skip and start
the thing
producing.
is, though, they better, like, I was all excited about the Livewire because I had a chance to demo one, and then they come out with a price of $30,000.
Yeah, but you can't be surprised by that. Like, there's.
I was thinking that thing was going to come in at like 15,000.
No, nobody's making. Yeah. So here's the kicker: is unfortunately when Livewire was released, when people first started kind of talking e-bikes ish, or when it kind of became more public knowledge, I'll give Livewire credit for that. I think Livewire from Harley was a brilliant marketing idea. I absolutely said it 4 years ago. I was like, there's no way this is going into production. There's just simply no way that this is going to happen. But it got everybody talking about it. It got everybody talking about Harley Davidson. It got everybody all stirred up about it. And then sure enough, it went dark for 4 years. Well, they were hoping in that 4 years that battery technology was going to rapidly increase in performance and decrease in price. Unfortunately, none of that happened, which is a real huge bummer. I definitely am at the front of the line of people that would say, like, I wish, a Tesla or somebody would have gotten it together and somehow developed better battery power, but it didn't happen. They still are terrifically expensive. They still have a lot of limitations, but Harley could smell the blood in the water about the e-bikes that are coming on now, especially with things like Bird scooter floating around. I know that sounds like a really weird thing to bring up, but I'm telling you, I've seen more people and young people on these Bird scooters that I don't think I ever would have seen on a motorized two-wheel
They're
vehicle
all over South
ever.
Florida.
So
All
they're
over
all
South
over.
Florida.
People love to bitch about them because they're like make a mess and blah, blah, blah,
Right.
whatever. I'm pumped about them. And here's why. It's getting those people that normally would not be on two wheels, motorized two wheels, it's putting them on it. To me, that also means that hopefully maybe it'll start teaching them to start looking for other things and people on two wheels. And if they're behind the wheel of a car, maybe help them start looking for motorcyclists and seeing motorcyclists a little bit better.
Yeah.
I also personally know, I just met somebody 2 nights ago who she's like, I rode a Bird scooter last week and had such a hoot, I bought one. So now
Right.
she's never had an interest in riding motorcycles. She's like, I rode a scooter once. It sucked. It wasn't for me. I rode this Birder all the way across town. I love it. I bought one for a couple $100. I'm pumped. I'm over the moon. Now, the reason why e-bikes now is especially important and why Harley Davidson had to get it together and release this model is, in my mind, 50% of Americans now live in cities. That's a lot of people who don't need a big ass, heavy, expensive bike. They need transportation. When are we just going to suck it up and just admit that motorcycles are a rad form of transportation? So why not give me some sort of motorized, inexpensive, lightweight, no muss, no fuss. There's no oil changes with e-bikes. There's,
Right.
the cost of getting into them might be a little bit higher because again, that battery tech is a little bit sluggish and didn't quite perform and didn't quite get up to where it needed to be. So a really good BMX styled e-bike right now is in about the $2,000 category, but anything that is motorcycle frame, traditional motorcycle type looks, size, a range of 100 miles or so, you're going to be easily into that for $15,000.
Yeah.
Zero, I think their least expensive one is, I think, what, 12 or 13, and Zero is the biggest player in the field right
the
now.
SRF like 19,000. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
they're doing the best version they can, and their bikes are still at $15,000 for motorcycles type e-bikes. So I'm really interested in the smaller
Where do
$2,000
you think the
category.
starting price should be for that in a smaller one? Because just before we get to that, Crash, last episode we talked about e-bicycles. So Crash bought one of those, and one of our guys that he's got a blog, Jed's Moto, he bought an e-bicycle. And I'm seeing more and more of these things now being advertised, and maybe that's another gateway to an electric motorcycle. But
Agreed.
and those are around $2,000,
Yeah.
for an e-bicycle.
I know, which I get it because again, I keep going back to the battery, but that is the biggest chunk of money put into those. So if somebody whoever can
Honestly,
fix the
Jackie,
battery
too, I don't know how
situation
much you
is
know
the
about
golden ticket.
bicycles in general.
Yeah.
A decent road bike is
Oh,
about
it's thousands of dollars.
$500.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So, but where do you think the starting price should be for an entry-level motorcycle that would be considered a medium displacement, similar to a medium displacement fuel-powered bike? I mean, are you thinking like $5,000? Like, what do you think that market should come in at to generate more interest?
I mean, I would be really pumped if it could be in the $5,000 to $7,000 category. I'd be pretty
Right.
excited about it. If you're talking about a true standardized motorcycle appearing
Yeah.
type machine,
You can commute on, things like that.
yeah, I'd be really pumped if they were in the 5 to 7, but that's not where they're at right now, unfortunately. So to me, the next answer, because I think that this is a really economy based problem.
Mhm.
I think people just don't have that kind of money laying around right now. And so $2,000 is definitely easier to swallow. So I love looking at the $2,000 e-bikes, even though it still is a little, but I love seeing the $2,000 e-bikes that have like kind of some motorcycle vibes to them. I love the really interesting, like BMX bikes with the big banana seats, like Zeus, ZOOS bikes, just kickstarted a couple of months ago.
I haven't
That
seen
bike,
these yet. Yeah.
I've had the chance to ride one. It was a hoot. It had the bigger 1500-watt engine in it. It was terrifically fast. I had the chance to ride it in downtown Los Angeles, and a motorcyclist pulled up next to me and flagged me down and made me pull over and was like, "What the hell is that? That's amazing." And I was like,
Really?
"Well, the owner's up the street at this launch party, come on over." And so I took him over there, and the guy was like, "I'd buy one right now. Like, that's amazing." Because it goes honestly like 40 miles per hour. Like, it's super, super fun and ridiculous and very silly and a very, very good time. But there's a couple different versions of that. There's another company called Super 73. There's another company called, I mean, they're kind of all over the place making these motorcycle-y vibe, fat tire, knobby tire with like luggage racks. And they're all in the like $2,000 to like $2,800 category. And I think that is really, really very interesting.
Okay, so I'm
And I
looking
think that
at
has the
the
potential to
73
take
right now.
everyone's lunch money. And I think if a bigger player could go into it and throw a bunch of money behind it, it would explode. It would catch fire.
So these are bicycles, right? I mean,
Yes,
for lack of a
still
better,
correct. They're still in the bicycle pedal assist category.
so it's like
That
a
way they
moped
don't have to
kind
be
of.
licensed. They don't have
Right,
to be
right, right.
licensed as motorcycles. They don't have to be registered as motorcycles. You don't have to have a motorcycle endorsement. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It opens up the field to a lot more people, but it still is motorized. It still gets them on two wheels. It might be the gateway drug to get them on maybe a little bit bigger two wheels or not. Who cares? Do what you got to do.
I mean, even if this was a category of transportation, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And
Yeah.
that's the thing is can't stress it enough. Half of America lives in cities. That's half of Americans who probably really don't care about riding across America on a great big huge bagger or touring bike and probably won't for a very, very long time. So what about those people? And again, what about Asia? Asia is the largest market in the world right now. Those people
Yeah.
don't care about great big huge tour bikes.
No,
They
they're
care.
doing business on a 250, carting their family around and their
Oh
products
gosh,
and
yeah.
everything
Oh,
else. Yeah.
250 is huge for Asia.
Yeah.
250 is the top of the line for Asia, really, because then that also jumps you into same thing in Europe, bumps you into a different license category, and it's very, very, very expensive. Europe in particular, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get the large displacement
Really?
license. Yep. Yep. So that's why you've always seen smaller displacement vehicles crush and scooters crush in Europe. You don't have to have that over the top license, and Asia's the same way.
Well, last time I was in Italy, all you saw were scooters. And
Yeah.
plus some of the cities we were in, like in Sicily, the streets are so small that they don't even support most large
Yeah.
vehicles. So it's either a Fiat 500 with a true 500cc engine in it, or it's a scooter that were everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And I think
Like bread delivery, milk delivery, guys with their tool bags on the back going and
for
doing a
sure,
repair job.
because
Yeah,
it's transportation.
right.
I think we just kind of got sold a bill of goods starting maybe in like the 1970s about America and this freedom machine and this like romantic tales of bikes, and we stepped away from the fact that they're just transportation. They're a super fun, super rad, super sexy, super cool form of transportation, but man, let's quit playing games here. It's transportation.
Yeah,
People just got to get around. People need to like run errands and live their life,
yeah.
hopefully in a reasonably priced way, and have fun while they're doing it. I'm that like again, I'm really passionate, and I'm a firm believer in the small displacement has the potential to really save motorcycling.
I'm tending to agree with you. Like, I never felt like there wasn't a place for small displacement motorcycles, but I was absolutely one of those people that would call it a starter bike. And now my thoughts have completely shifted, especially when you ride high performance small displacement motorcycles that, like a two-stroke 400cc that'll kick your ass, and like
Oh gosh, yeah.
you don't want to get back on it after that.
No,
So
I ride in town. I ride a little 120 like 110 Cub Clone
mhm.
is what I ride in town. My big bike, my 750, is still in Europe. I left it there to go back and ride it again. So I ride a little scooter or moped or whatever you want to call it. It's not a moped, but I ride a little scooter, small displacement motorcycle for here in town just for running errands. And when we go dirt biking, I ride a 200 two-stroke, and then I love my little Elsinore 125 two-stroke. It makes a ton of noise. It's a load of fun.
Yeah.
I love the smaller displacement bikes, and I wish that we could get away from this mindset of starter bikes or baby bikes or
Right. Or a girl
girl
bike.
bikes
Yeah.
or all of this stupid story, and just
Right.
get back and I it's just going to take a really good marketing company. Unfortunately, that's
Well,
just
I think Honda
how
started it
business
with the
works.
Grom, don't you? I mean, there's like
Oh
a
God,
ton
oh
of
the Grom.
Groms around here.
I completely agree. So the Grom is another proof in the pudding that the market is gagging for small displacement, because the Grom was the number one selling Honda several years ago, and now the Monkey is sold out. The Cub is almost
I know,
sold
and
out,
those are
if not
both so
totally sold
cool.
out. Like, they're
Yeah.
gone. So if this isn't enough proof to like every other manufacturer, like, what are you doing? Why are you making these huge bikes? Like, just make a super
See,
fun 150.
and like when Honda or Yamaha repackaged and sold the SR400 here, I was like, oh my God, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh,
And just,
really? I like that bike.
oh,
But I like all the bikes.
and it's just, but I I like that 400, 350, 400 cc class. Like I think that's super cool. That's just my personal thing about the styling of it, but I want to see more of those. And as far as the e-bike's concerned in that kind of gateway, I'm looking at this SRF pretty seriously. Like I really like the way that Zero's got the package for it and how you can buy the battery technology and increase it. And
Yep.
now it's become a real honest to goodness option for commuting. Like when I lived in Jupiter, I had a 60-mile commute every day. I rode the KTM to work a lot,
Yeah.
but with an electric bike,
Yeah.
go to work and plug it in, and because 60 miles, that's nothing. They have that technology down for the bikes.
Yeah. For sure. Now, the
Yeah.
Zero bikes are really interesting. A company called Bramo was also manufactured here in the United States several years ago. They were purchased by Polaris.
Mhm.
So they have all the intellectual property, if you know where I'm headed
Yeah,
with that
yeah, yeah.
with that statement.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting thing for me. Clearly, it's not anything happening right now. And even Bramo, years ago, that was a $20,000+. That was a $20,000 bike. Again, it's just the battery technology has not progressed as fast as it needed to, and it's that hasn't gone up and the price hasn't gone down, which is unfortunate. So it still is a little bit priced out for that. But another
Didn't
cool bike that you should
KTM
go
and
look at
Husky
is,
brand don't they have an electric bike too?
I didn't catch the beginning, sorry.
KTM and Husky doesn't that?
Somebody just released one. Maybe they both just did. Somebody just released an electric dirt bike.
Because I go into the delership and there's a bike.
But I don't know if it was released or if it's a prototype.
Let's see what it says right
I think
here.
Honda has a 450 electric prototype floating around that they revealed real recently.
So
Dirt
KTM's
bike,
got a
of
bike
course.
called the E-Ride.
Yes.
Right. That's their brand, but there was another brand in the dealership I saw, and I can't remember what it was called, but I'll have to look it up.
Just another cool.
I'm definitely liking the future of electric motorcycles. There's no doubt about it, especially after testing one and seeing all the torque that's available. Like,
oh my gosh, are they a hoot?
Yeah.
They're just the smile machine. That's the other thing, is when people, because I am in the V-twin space, if I ever bring up e-bikes, I do a live video blog over on Choppertown. And it's very, very, very internal combustion, Harley Davidson centric, which is cool, which is fine. I'll talk Harley all day long. We talk about interesting stuff. And matter of fact, yesterday's show, I do a show called Fun Fact Friday, powered by SNES Cycle. And yesterday I talked about East German motorcycles. So I'm willing to talk about anything. I'll bring anything to the table. But we have talked about e-bikes, and the internet just catches on fire with rage, and people are so upset about the e-bike thing. And it's like, this isn't about you. Like this just isn't for you. It's okay. No one's going to take away your internal combustion engine. This bike just isn't for you. That's all right. Like, it doesn't have to be for everybody.
And that same person secretly got one
average,
hiding in the garage.
The average American only commutes like 5.7 miles a day or something crazy. Like they don't need it. Like,
listen, I think the diehard V-twin person has a problem with anything that's a change from quote unquote heritage, because when Harley reduced the concepts for the 3 new bikes that they were coming out with, the Pan America and the sport bike and everything, I looked at the comments like on Instagram, and it was just full of rage of how can you do this?
I know,
you're ruining the heritage of motorcycling, and I wouldn't want to argue with that person, but just say, have you ever given one of those bikes a chance? Like, have you ever decided because when I remember going to we were on a long ride one day, and one of the Harley Davidson dealerships was having like a big party with hot dogs or anything. We stopped, and I wanted to see a couple of the new bikes, and this guy goes, "When are you going to get rid of that motorcycle and get a real motorcycle?" I said, "When your Harley can do what this can do, I'll be glad to buy one." So
Yeah.
I'm all in on testing a Pan America when it comes out. Like
Oh gosh, yeah.
I want to see it. I want to check it out. I want to see where that goes, because that's what I like. But don't, if you're gonna kill the manufacturer because they want to branch out and bring more people into motorcycling, you're only slitting your own throat. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's
because
a
the same
consumer
for an
driven
electric bike's
problem.
not the same for somebody. A big bagger's not the bike for somebody else.
Yeah. And here's the interesting thing is when folks are feeling those feelings and feeling those, from the 1970s on, freedom machine, hog conversations, and they want to, poop on the new Pan America or the new liquid cooled engine that is coming from Harley Davidson. They just released the specs for it really recently. And it is the liquid cooled engine that will be going in that bike and several of their more middleweight platforms.
Mm-hmm.
The real is Harley has been pushing the envelope actually for a very long time. Harley Davidson did have a two-stroke bike back in the 1950s. It was based off of the DKW 125.
Mm-hmm.
Harley Davidson also purchased Air Mach-E to get into the sprint game, to get into the small displacement game, and again back into the two-stroke game.
One of the first bikes I learned how to ride was a 250 Air Mach-E Harley Davidson, yeah.
So to me, when you want to get into this, like, Harley Davidson is only one thing, I got to tell you, Harley Davidson isn't only one thing. Harley Davidson is a lot of different things. And if you knew your history, you would know that they are actually a pretty innovative company and are willing to shake things up every couple of years or so. So, again, that's
I want to see
going
them
to take
do that.
an education,
Absolutely.
and that's just going to take a really strong marketing campaign in order to get those consumers to either come around or at least back up off the ledge about it.
Well, I've said this before, and I'll even though like some of the guys in the podcasting world have disagreed because of their local Harley Davidson, but for me, if they want to succeed, they also need to change their sales force, because I've had the experience that I've had going to the dealerships, like when going to look at a Buell or going to look at the newer bikes that came out that weren't made in the United States, the sales force was super negative about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, especially here in South Florida. Now that's kind of changed. Like one of the dealerships I walked into recently, the guy was like pumped and all excited about the new bikes coming out, but that wasn't the way it was. I mean, I don't know if you ever had walked into when Buell was being sold and tried to, talk to a guy about a Buell or look at one. I mean, 3 different dealerships I got completely, no, you don't want that. Forget that, man.
But I would never put that mantle entirely on Harley Davidson or Harley Davidson dealerships' shoulders. I think that is systemic. I think that is industry wide, for people to drink the Kool-Aid so hard that they need to like poop on other brands or poop on things that are different or new. I think that is a, retraining sales force problem. That is a new, younger consumer facing
I agree.
problem.
That's what I'm saying. I think it is systemic. I don't think it's necessarily the local dealership. I think it's
all over the
mindset.
I think it's the anomaly for a dealership to be open to their other side brands, because there's very, very, very few standalone dealerships, period, anymore. There's usually at least 2 or 3 different brands represented underneath one roof. So I think it's really stupid.
The Harley dealers seem to be solely Harley Davidson.
Harley, but you're right. Harley are mostly Harley, but I see Harley getting into bed sometimes with side brands.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's, but again, actually, technically, it doesn't even matter if they're under one roof or not. I think it is just a training issue where people need to be explained to that in order to sell your thing, you don't need to poop on the other thing.
Right.
I think that is lazy. I think that it is poorly informed. And I think that you upset consumers that way, because what if they happen to have that other brand in their garage right now and you just pooped on it? I'm certainly not going to open my wallet for you now anymore.
Right.
But I think that this is just a general poor salesmanship,
So I guess the point I'm trying to make is when they release the Pan America and these other 2 bikes, they need to really get the sales force to get behind it, and maybe the way to do it is get some of these guys out on those bikes.
Yeah. And I think that is their intention. I think, especially when they showed by having the Livewire trickled out so soon, so far in advance, and letting people ride it, get all that excitement, get all whipped up about it. And then for it to hit for it to finally start hitting showroom floors, which it will this summer. I think it's going to start landing in August. You know, they've already like whipped up the consumer. I worked at the Cleveland International Motorcycle Show, and almost every single person for Harley Davidson, and almost every single person that came into the booth was like, "Where's Livewire?"
Yeah.
That's all that they wanted to see. Are they going to buy it? No. But did they want to throw their leg over it and go see it? Yeah. So good on Harley, you know, for getting it together and trickling it out and whipping up the consumer.
Well, that
in
person
that
may
way.
walk into the dealership to see the Livewire, throw their leg over it, and then go, "Wow, what's that cool looking bike over there?" and find out it's a sporty that they'd never seen before.
Yeah. But it's a great marketing exercise to have that bike be around. Are they going to sell a bunch of it? No. I mean, they will, because
You don't think so, Jackie? You don't think
consume at $30,000? No. But I think
30,000?
it'll end up in collections. It'll end up bought by people who have deep enough pockets to throw $30,000 at a bike that they probably won't ever ride. I think it'll end up in those types of garages. But I mean, is the everyday Joe Schmo going to drop 30 grand on an e-bike that only goes 100 miles? Absolutely not.
Let me tell you something. If that bike would have come out at 15, I would have seriously considered buying one.
But it gets them in the door.
Yeah.
It gets them in there talking about it. It gets them in there looking at it. And then hopefully by that point, the battery technology will, you know, I think, again, I keep bringing it up, but this is the Achilles heel of the entire e-bike conversation is the battery. So I think Harley also is trying to improve their battery tech. You know, they did join forces, or they were going to join forces, or they were having conversations with Alta. Alta was another American-made e-bike company based out of the West Coast.
I saw at the KTM Husky dealer was.
Oh yeah, and the Altas are beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they're just gorgeous machines. You can still find them floating around a little bit. They're absolutely exceptional. They were trying to get a little bit of additional funding, and so they tapped Harley Davidson in order to form some sort of partnership with them. Unfortunately, that partnership fell apart, but Harley then went and took that money, and they've opened up a battery tech and e-bike tech center in Silicon Valley. So they mean it. They're going to do it. They're coming on with it. And if you look at their other concepts, they are planning on releasing smaller things like a very like bird scootery looking thing. They've also got another pedal assist like BMXy looking thing as part of their concept program.
Cool. Yeah, well, so if anyone's going to be able to do it, it'll be them, because I know when they put money into something,
takes those pockets. It takes those pockets. Like I said, it's somebody big just needs to throw cash at it, and I think it'll really, really have the potential to catch fire. Another thing that's interesting about, sorry, this turned into a big Harley Davidson conversation, but another thing that's interesting about Harley is that the fact that they purchased Stasic, that little pedal assist, little pedal bike for kids, for little itty bitty kids, and it has an engine on it as well. It has a little battery engine on it as well, so it is mobile. You can push it, and then when your kid has his balance well enough, it has a throttle on it, and then your little kids can learn to throttle. And the fact that they bought that and are going to put Harley Davidson branding all over it and have their logo in front of 3-year-old kids' eyeballs, I think is another incredibly smart marketing move on behalf of Harley Davidson. So kudos Harley right now. They're not stepping on the gas because they're in the e-bike game, but I guess they're stepping on the electrons.
we got a question in the chat for you.
Okay.
This is from Alex, and it says, do you think that some kind of inexpensive subscription or rental of small displacement or small electric bikes could be as popular as the electric kick scooters? Could licensing be an issue?
I would say I would be really interested to see that. And I've seen that model. I think I've seen that floating around in New York City. It's a little bit more of a scooter sized e-bike, and you can rent them. I've also seen them in Europe. There's a really rad company called Emmy that makes those, and they're bright orange and you can't miss them. And it's the same app-based type program where you scan the code, you put the thing in, and it's already got your credit card information. It was a little pricey, but damn, were they cool. And I really, really wanted to ride one. And I just didn't get around to doing it because I was riding my own bike, or I was trying to pedal motorcycle and work off some of the awesome food that I was eating in Europe. But they're very popular. I would love to see a version of that here in the United States. Bird has already announced that they do have plans on expanding the Bird scooter program, and they are going to start releasing little Bird scooters that have baskets on the fronts and seats. So there is a Bird 2.0 coming.
So as long as it's a bike, it's really not a licensing issue. As long as it's still considered a bicycle, right? As long as it's
that's the thing about the e-bikes is e-bikes right now, because it does not have a CC, it does not have a displacement. It can dodge that needing a license category.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and he kind of made a comment too about Pan America that didn't help that it was a design monstrosity. And I mean, a lot of people within
Oh, I
the,
thought they were cool looking. I
you know
can't
what
wait to see them.
it looked like, you know who Bender is on that sci-fi cartoon, the robot Bender with like, it looked
Yeah,
like Bender and Electrolux had a kid together, and that's what
yeah.
spit out was the Pan America. It's just a design thing. Like it's especially the people that come from like the adventure bike world, they're looking at the like, that thing's gross. But again, I've not seen one in person. I'd like to
Yeah.
actually, because I felt that way about a V-Strom, and then I owned one for 10 years. You know, it's like,
Well, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I love the design of it, but I love new design and I love weird and I love different. So that's no big shock for me that I really thought that was kind of a cool looking bike and really interesting. I'm also, though, really interested in, again, that new engine that's going to be put into that bike, which is that liquid cooled. I don't know the CC. They didn't release the CC on it, but they just released the specs for it. It's floating around on the internet right now. It's under patent. That's been leaked
is this a
out,
brand new
and
engine,
that's
or is it the same
it's a
liquid
brand new
cooler
engine.
that they
No,
had?
it's a brand new engine. It is not an extension of the Evo or whatever the previous liquid cooled guy was. This
No,
is
the
a
one that
brand.
was on the other bike, the one that was Porsche designed.
Yeah, isn't that the Evo? Yeah,
No,
the
it was
Evo.
something else. It was called for the life of me, I can't remember. I always forget the name of this
I
motorcycle.
know you're right. Me too. And I just did like a show on Chopper Town about it, so I feel like a jerk.
And like
Um,
it was
do
like
you have
one
the
of their
Google
worst
machine in front
selling
of you?
bikes, right?
I thought it was Evo. Maybe I'm wrong. Hold on, stand by. I'll look on the Google machine. Um,
It was the V-Rod.
V-Rod, thank you.
Yeah,
So anyway, so yes, no, this is not the V-Rod. This is not an extension of that
all
V-Rod. But I
new.
would like to take a second and point out that the V-Rod in particular had to be designed by Porsche, had to be designed by an outside company because there was such pushback to Harley Davidson even designing their own liquid cooled engine because they have always been air cooled, right? So there was such an uproar about them even designing a liquid cooled that they wanted to have it be in house, but not be in house, if that makes any sense. They needed to outsource it and have somebody else
There
be in
was an
charge,
uproar
be in
internally.
charge. Just within their consumer base.
Really, I didn't know
Yep.
that.
Yep. There was so much resistance to liquid cooling at that time. I mean, this is quite a long time ago, but there was
Mhm.
so much resistance to even getting into the liquid cool game for the traditional air cooled Harley Davidson owner, that they decided to outsource it and find somebody else who could do a better job with it, which was the folks at Porsche.
Mhm.
So that is the history a little bit of that V Rod. But the other thing that interests me about that Pan America is that, to me, it makes perfect sense to have a V twin engine go into a dirt machine because of that low end torque. I mean, that's just the setup of that engine. Like, wouldn't you want all of that low end while
Yeah,
you're
sure.
out shredding around in the dirt? To me, that
That's
sounds
why I ride a
really interesting.
KTM, you know, because it's got a big V twin in it, and that's a great motor for that. Um, I think it'll remain to be seen, like what the chassis is like, you know, how the final drive is on it, all those things
Oh,
that
for sure.
matter.
They've got a lot of homework to do on it, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that it comes in to compete with the upper end BMW and KTM, like the Super Adventure and the GSA Adventure, price wise.
I would guess it to be probably around 24.
That's not bad, and that's where it should probably come in at, because that's the same price for those larger bikes. And then from there, if you wanted to work down into some smaller displacement ones, and even if you know, like if they partner with Bosch for the technology as far as the ride by wire and the different ECM settings on there, that would be great. You know, it would be a bike I would certainly go look at, because you know the fit and finish of a Harley Davidson is just so superior to everything else. It's just they're beautiful machines. The paint jobs are incredible. You know, the
Yeah.
workmanship that goes into it are great. The big bikes, like I test rode an ultra classic at AIM Expo in Vegas, and it's just not my cup of tea. You know what I mean? It's just not
Different
the
strokes for different folks,
yeah,
my
yeah,
friend.
yeah, yeah. But don't get me wrong, I like everything about the bike was really nice put
Yeah.
together.
But if somebody said, here's the keys to one, and I need you to ride this to California right now,
I
would you
do
be
it
like,
in a
yeah,
heartbeat.
yes,
Yeah.
see, it's the right tool for the right job. It's the same
If it's
conversation
got
that
two
I keep
wheels, I'll ride it.
bringing up. I know, right? If it's got wheels, I'll totally ride it too, but or just hand me the keys. But it's the same conversation about, I'm focused so much on folks that live in cities and smaller displacement and more logical transportation for folks that only commute maybe 10 miles a day.
Right.
But there's there is still a segment of folks that are like, I'm going to ride across America on this thing, or even if they only do it once or twice a year, that's their thing, and keep on keeping on. You know, it's the right tool for the right job, I
Well, like
say.
you mentioned before, we still have to educate those cage drivers as well about what the motorcycle owns on the road. You know, like I've had people literally try to get in the same lane as me because they think they can push me over to the side,
Yeah.
and that's on a big bike. So, you know, you're not looking at a bicycle, and even bicycles, like in Florida here, a bicycle can take the whole lane if they want. There's no restriction on it. And people just they scream at you. They don't. They're like, get on the sidewalk, and no, in Florida, it's illegal to ride on the.
Oh, yeah. I hate when people ride bicycles and bird scooters and things on sidewalks. To me, it's like, no, you got to be out on the
They're
street.
not
You
supposed to
gotta,
be there, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
Because I want us to take up space. I want us to be more visible. I want us to claim, you know, the space that we deserve to have as other motorcyclists, bicyclists, utilizing the road. You know,
right.
we're entitled to that. So, you
So
know, but you're right.
we're
It's a
getting
change in
close to
mindset.
we're getting close to finishing, but I wanted to get your thoughts
Okay.
on lane splitting. How do you feel about it?
I'm a huge fan. Huge
Okay.
fan. Can't say enough good stuff about it.
Yeah.
Lane splitting is, I don't think it's technically legal in Europe, but it's definitely not like process. It's not persecuted, I guess is the word I would use.
It's not like frowned
Um,
upon here then.
it's not frowned upon. No. So I think it's incredibly handy for getting through, and especially in situations where there's filtering involved, which is where everybody is at a stoplight and the motorcyclists go to the front of the row and then can take off from there. I think that makes incredible sense as far as relieving congestion on the roads, number one, but also number two. Right now, one of the highest incidences of car versus motorcycle accidents is getting squashed in between two cars
Yeah.
because the car behind is either A, not paying attention and quite probably on their phone, which is a bummer. But number two, they also have a tendency to look through the motorcyclist to the vehicle in front of them.
Yeah.
And people have literally on bikes been squashed between two cars. The person's like, I never even saw you. So any opportunity where we as motorcyclists can put ourselves out of harm's way and get to the front of the line and get away from the cars as soon as possible, I totally support. Two
It's
big
so
thumbs
funny
up.
because I had an argument with somebody about filtering, not even lane splitting, just filtering. And they're like, why do you think you have the right to go ahead of me?
See, that's what it is. It's just car people hating the fact that we can get through traffic easier, and it's like tough titties. You know, that's why
As
I
soon as
have
that
not
light
one
turns
license. I
green,
have two.
I'm
Yeah,
gone. And
yeah.
you're
I'm not.
one step ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And we're actually relieving congestion and relieving traffic by more of us being on bikes,
Right.
more of us filtering, more of us getting through city centers and things faster and easier. We're actually relieving and improving the traffic situation. So instead of cars being all bent out of shape about it, if we could have a conversation about the fact that you owe us a thank you and we're helping you out, like that would be even better.
We need to do a public education campaign on that as motorcyclists, honestly. I think
I
that's
agree.
yeah.
I agree.
All right, Jackie,
I
tell
would way
people
rather see my AMA dollars go to those sorts of things. I'd be happy camper.
you know, maybe that's something we should push and send to the reps of AMA.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so where can people find you?
So as far as social media, I do roll heavy on the social medias. I'm of course over on Facebook and Instagram at Jackie Van Ham. I push things over to my Twitter, but to be honest, I don't actually use it. I also do some live streams and feeds and a moto video blog of the log over on Choppertown Facebook page. Live and in person, however, I can usually be found at lots of live events all over the place. Next weekend, I will be down in Tennessee in Maryville at the Smoky Mountain Harley Davidson weekend. I will be doing the color commentary for Flat Out Friday.
So Jackie, send me all those links, all the stuff. We'll have it in the show notes and we can direct people to where they can see you live. And if you're going to be in the Tennessee area again, what's the date on that? That's next weekend?
It is next weekend. It's technically
Rocky
it's May 3rd through the 5th. The
Okay.
race is on May 4th.
All right, cool. So if you're in that area, go check them out. All right, guys, get out there and ride. See ya.